This is Paul Schmid. Welcome to the Pursuit Zone. Squash Falconer has summited Mount Everest, was the first British woman to paraglide from Mont Blanc in France, and in the summer of 2013 set the world record for riding an ElliptiGO bicycle across the UK, Holland, Germany, Switzerland, and France. A 3,074-mile journey over 9 weeks to raise money for the breast cancer charity Coppafeel, and to get people to join the ride and share the love of a good adventure. You can read more about it at squashfalconer.com. Squash Falconer, welcome to the Pursuit Zone.
Hi there, Paul.
Squash, first of all, what is an ElliptiGO?
Okay, an ElliptiGO is an amazing machine. It looks like a bike with no seat, but it's actually more like a cross trainer in the gym with wheels on it. So I guess if you imagine a cross trainer with wheels on and bicycle handles, that's what it is. And it's running without impact, so it's more like running than it is like cycling.
How did you come to be involved in this expedition?
Well, actually, it was through a friend of mine, Dave Cornthwaite. He's got a project called Expedition 1000, where he's doing 25 journeys of 1,000 miles or more on non-motorized transport. And I got introduced to Dave via an editor of a magazine, Adventure 52 magazine. And we sort of said hi to each other, and, we've got common interest with the adventure stuff. And it was Dave that sent me a photograph of the ElliptiGO just before Christmas and said, did I fancy doing a journey on one? And I just said yes.
How much preparation and planning went into this expedition?
Well, Dave contacted me in December last year about the trip, and we left in the 30th of April, the last day in April. So we had a few months to do some planning. There was quite a bit of planning involved, but in terms of the actual physical preparation, I hadn't done very much elliptigoing at all, but what I did have was a good level of endurance fitness from mountains I'd been climbing, and the kind of level of fitness that I maintain anyway. But Dave really hadn't done much at all either on the ElliptiGO, and that's one of the beautiful things about it is, there's no impact. You can get straight into it, and literally we were doing quite big miles every day, and we were just ready to go the next day. So it was great from that point of view.
Now, you mentioned some of your previous mountainous expeditions. How did this expedition vary from those?
Oh, this was completely different from the kind of normal expedition that I do. Often I'm in high mountains. So, for starters, this one was based at sea level. And rather than being remote and kind of out of contact for the time I was away, on this trip, we were trying to engage with as many people as possible. So we were doing presentations along the way, that kind of thing. So it was massively different from that point of view. We didn't have support, so we were carrying our own kit and food, but we could stock up on supplies daily or every few days because we were never remote and never far away from shops. So I guess the main difference was that we were never remote, and we could always kind of access shops and people.
So you're on sort of a cross-trainer device with wheels.
Yes.
How do you, because it's not a traditional bike where you can put panniers on it and
no, not at all.
Such. So how do you carry your gear?
We use the Nomad trailers, and we attach them to the back wheel on the bike. And so we were able to carry, we generally had 20 to 30 kilos in our trailers. We were completely self-sufficient. We had everything we needed in those trailers. So it was an even better workout for us, because not only were we riding the ElliptiGOs, which are kind of, they've worked out that they're about 30% more effort than a traditional bike. But with carrying the trailers as well, we were working considerably harder.
Tell me a little bit about the helmets that you guys were wearing.
Oh, the helmets were fantastic. We met a guy at a show who designed these helmets. They're called cranium helmets, and the guy is called Annie Rayo. And he was a design student who got knocked off his bike, and he decided for his project he wanted to solve the problem of helmet safety, because although the helmets that are available today offer some safety, he really believed that we could have a safer helmet. And he came up with the idea to look at nature, and he looked at the woodpecker, which has a corrugated cartilage structure between its beak and its skull, because obviously the woodpecker is pounding a tree all the time. And what he did was he copied this corrugated structure that you find in woodpeckers into the helmets, and the structure is actually made out of a honeycomb paper. And after lots of tests, it was said that it was the safest helmet in the world, up to 7 times safer than a regular cycling helmet. So what was great was we met Annie at the show. He then said that he would love to be a part of the trip and support us with helmets, and we went down to where he works, and we got to go through we got to see all the designs and talk through the process and all that kind of thing. So that was great, and it was just nice to know that we were wearing such safe helmets.
Let's talk about the journey. Tell me about where you started and where you ended, and maybe hit a couple of high points for you along the way.
Okay, so we started the journey in England. We started at Everton Football Club because actually the top players use the ElliptiGOs as part of their training program. They're used as a training tool. A lot of Olympic athletes are using them too, which was news to me when I first started using it. So we began up near Liverpool, and we travelled right down to the south of the UK, to Brighton, and then back up again to Harwich to get the ferry across to Holland. We went across Holland and into Germany. And actually, we had amazing weather at the beginning of the trip. We had 10 days glorious weather in England, and I thought, this is it. We're going to have beautiful weather all the way. But when we got to Holland and into Germany, we literally had 4 or 5 weeks of rain. It wasn't the end of the world, but I was hoping for sunshine. We travelled through Germany down to the south, and then we left Germany one morning and went through Austria just for a couple of hours, had lunch there, and then ended up in Switzerland. So that was a pretty amazing day. We had 3 countries in one day. We then crossed Switzerland into France and went right down to the south of France. And France was really a highlight because we went into the Southern Alps, and it was just absolutely stunning. We were riding through the Gorge de Verdun, and spectacular scenery. Also hard work. We were getting to quite high elevations through the coals, up to a couple of 1,000 meters, and then dropping back down again, which of course was the fun part. But that was really beautiful, and made it all the way down to the south coast to Nice. From there, I travelled back up through France to Paris, which was the end point. There was lots of different things happened along the way, lots of unexpected things. We met a member of the royal family when we were in Holland, Prince Peter Christian. He actually rides an ElliptiGO, and he met us in the park there in Rotterdam. We got involved in a stair race when we were in Germany. We arrived in Ulm, and Ulm Minster is a big church that they have there, and every year they have this famous stair race, and Dave and I had ridden 60 or 70 miles to get there. And then when we arrived, the mayor was there in the radio station, and they said that they were delighted to be able to offer us a place in this stair race. There's 400 and something steps. So that was quite fun. We both got up there in a respectable time, but we were very, very tired. And I think probably, one of the main highlights for me was the people that we met along the way. Often when I do trips, because they're quite remote, you meet some people, but I was constantly meeting new people every day on this trip. And, right from the start of this trip, Dave and I experienced incredible generosity and hospitality from people, which was just wonderful.
You mentioned having to ride through some, I don't know if mountainous is the correct term.
Yeah, mountainous. Yeah, absolutely.
How would you explain sort of the terrain as you went, and how did the ElliptiGOs handle that terrain? Do they have the gearing that a traditional bike would?
Yeah, well, the ElliptiGO's got quite small wheels, and when you look at it, you think, how will that handle hills and things? And it actually has 8 gears, so it's no problem getting up any hill at all. And when I was in France, I went out to I spent a little bit of time in Tignes, and I took the ElliptiGO up the mountain pass, and it's one of the highest paved cols in Europe. So that was up to it's 2,700 meters, and basically you just get in a low gear and you go slowly, but it gets up there. The ElliptiGOs can handle it. They're not designed for off-road, so whilst we went on, tow paths and canal paths, they're not really designed for off-road. So if you stick to roads, you'll be absolutely fine, and you can get up any kind of steepness of terrain.
How many miles a day were you putting in?
The mileage varied. Some days we'd do as little as 15, 20 miles. That was rare. But I got up to 130 miles on the longest days. I guess average was probably 60, 70 miles.
So this whole time, by the way, so you have Dave with you.
Yes.
Or for a portion of it, I should say, because at one point in time he became injured. But so during the time that he's with you, tell me about Dave. What's it like to travel with him?
It's great fun traveling, with anyone on a trip, because obviously you're sharing the experience. On the bikes, though, it's interesting because it's the same as when you're cycling. You're together, but you're kind of apart because one's in front of the other all the time. It's difficult to ride side by side, but occasionally we were able to do that. And it was just good fun to have someone to bounce off, to do things with, and just to share the experience with. It was funny because at the beginning of the trip, Dave and I were doing presentations, and people were asking questions at the end of the night, and it was good for both of us to learn about each other because we didn't actually know each other very well at the start of the trip. We'd just met a handful of times, and even though we'd kind of been in contact for a couple of years, and it was nice to get to know each other as the trip progressed. And sometimes, people were quite surprised how little we knew about each other, because even though we were together all day, we were riding the bikes all day. So actually, there wasn't lots of time for chatting, and then we were doing presentations in the evening, and then both just practically passing out. So it was. It wasn't as I'd expected. We didn't get loads of time to get to know each other in the beginning, but certainly as the trip went on, we got to know each other better.
How often did you camp?
Well, this was actually amazing. I was expecting to camp a lot more than we did, but in total, the trip was 67 days, and actually out of that, we only camped for 9 nights.
And
the rest of the time we were put up by people. Sometimes it was arranged, sometimes it was through friends and family or friends of friends. Other times it was complete strangers. And then quite often when we were doing a presentation, we were hosted by the people who were organising or some of the guests there. So that was really unexpected, but a really nice luxury.
What was the reaction of people to the sight of these ElliptiGOs? You mentioned on your website that at the very beginning, some guy pulled his car in front of you and got out and said, "Stop, what the heck is this stuff?"
Yeah, well, that actually happened straight away as soon as we set off. We were literally 5 minutes into the journey, and this car overtook us, veered in front of us, and stopped kind of diagonally. And we had to stop, and he got out and had his arms up, and he was like, I just need to know what these are. What on earth are you riding? And that was probably the most extreme case of somebody doing that. But they just turn heads. Like, people are looking all the time. And certainly when we had other people riding with us, they were saying to us, it's amazing the reaction you guys are getting. Like, everybody stares at them. Once when we were in England, we were riding down the road and we heard this almighty skid, and some cars on the other side of the road were coming past, and one of the drivers was obviously having a good look, hadn't noticed the car in front had stopped, and he actually slammed his brakes on. Unfortunately, he did stop, but only just, and it sounded quite dramatic, but we certainly got people's attention on them.
How did the bike, or I should say, how did the ElliptiGO hold up over the 67 days?
Absolutely fantastic. No issues at all with the ElliptiGO. The only thing that happened was my back tyre, because I'd ridden over 3,000 miles on it. Well, I'd almost done that distance when this happened, and I'd got the trailer on the back. I'd worn through the actual outer tyre, and so that burst. I went over a hill, perhaps a bit faster than over a bump. Sorry, perhaps a bit faster than I should have been, and that actually burst. But that was kind of, I probably should have replaced the tyre before it went. But apart from that, the bike was fantastic. I had triple compound brake pads, which I hadn't really taken much notice of before I left, because I just, to me, brake pads were brake pads, but they were fantastic through all weathers. And the bike itself, no problems at all.
Were you carrying a spare tyre? How did you get that fixed?
Well, actually, I was carrying spare inner tubes, but no spare tyre. And it was 6 o'clock at night when it happened. I was in the middle of nowhere in France, and I just didn't know what I was going to do. But I looked around, and there was a supermarket not too far away. And opposite the supermarket, a few hundred yards down the road, was a mechanics, and it looked pretty run down and closed up. But there was somebody working under one of the trucks. And in my best French, I tried to explain what had happened, and he sort of shook his head. But then they took a look at the bike, and they actually drove me back to the nearest town. We went round 3 bike shops, managed to find a new tyre. It was slightly large, but the mechanic said he'd make it fit. He then fitted it to the bike, made it perfect again, and then inquired about where I'd be staying. And I said, I was camping, and I'd have a look round. And he said that I could camp at the garage. There was a field behind it. And then it started to rain. And when it started raining, he said, actually, my son lives at the garage. There's a flat on the side, and you're more than welcome to sleep in the lounge there. So I ended up making friends with the mechanics and staying there, which was amazing. It was like a guardian angel had appeared when that happened.
Just like, many of the examples that you've mentioned in your on your blog.
Well, I mean, right from the start of the trip, we set off and we were heading towards Stoke on our first day. We didn't know how long we were going to go for on the first day, so we'd kind of left our plans flexible, and we were going to camp. And when we were looking for somewhere to camp, a guy rode alongside me and was inquiring what they were and what we were doing. And then he asked where we'd be staying, and I sort of said, we're going to camp, but we're going to stay with people along the way, that kind of thing. And he said to me, well, why don't you come to my house? It's just a few miles down the road. And that really set the tone for the trip. I thought, wow, this is unbelievable. We've been completely spoilt this first night. But what was just incredible was that just kept happening. People were so generous and so open to it, and, wanted to be a part of it and wanted to help.
How did your body change over this trip? How did the ElliptiGO affect it?
Oh, well, my body changed quite a lot during the trip. I was slightly worried that I'd get kind of chunky thighs like you can do when you cycle a lot, but that didn't happen at all. Basically, I got leaner all over. I lost about 4 kilos in total, and I just got stronger. My muscles became more defined, and I got muscles where I didn't really realise that I could get muscles, and particularly around my knees, which were the muscles I was most excited about. I do a lot of sports, and I've never really been able to develop the muscles around my knees, and I've spoken to people before and coaches, and they've said you're going to have to do squats. It's the only way to build them up. And of course, building your knee muscles is so good because it protects the knees. And without even kind of noticing, these muscles were becoming really strong and defined. So that was fantastic. But also the muscles in my arms and my back became more developed, and I got stronger because the ElliptiGO really is an all-over body workout. So, it was really the strength thing. It was legs, arms, back, stomach as well. You can feel it in your stomach when you're riding along. And I just was burning a lot of calories, I think on the 100 miles days, we were probably burning up to 10,000 calories.
Wow.
Yeah. It meant I could eat absolutely loads, which was nice.
I mean, were you able to replenish that many calories?
I mean, no, I don't think on those big days I was, but basically, Dave and I, we managed ourselves as carefully as we could. So we were drinking regularly and plenty. Some days we'd have 8 litres of water. We were keeping the food intake constant, which I think is very important. We'd fuel up before we left. Every half an hour we were having a snack of some sort, even if it was just a bite of a chocolate bar, and just really kind of trying to eat the volume. So we did a good job on looking after ourselves from that point of view.
What changed for you once Dave became injured and had to drop out of the expedition?
Well, I guess everything changed. I've never done a solo trip, and I think I've considered doing them, but I think it's always going to be harder. So my head wasn't in that place, and when we separated and when Dave decided he wasn't carrying on, it became quite a different trip. I was, rather than having somebody to share the experience, but also the kind of practical side of things with, Dave did a lot of the navigation. We worked together on the social media side of things, and, he was my teammate. And when he left, left, that responsibility was all mine. And, you know, it's nice. You don't realise how nice it is just to chat to someone and bounce ideas off someone. And also as a morale booster, you know, on the long days, I had to really start digging deep within myself. And probably more than I had done before, I was relying on other people who were getting involved in the trip. And that was really lovely because people were just amazing that were supporting me. You know, I had friends sending lovely messages, but also there was a group of riders that had met us in Milton Keynes, and we'd stayed with them and they'd ridden with us to London. They actually came out when I was in Paris and rode the final stretch with me. And that, you know, that was just incredible. It was absolutely the icing on the cake for the trip, really. So I had lots of support, but it changed a lot. And, you know, it was tougher. But I think often these experiences that happen that are unplanned and, you know, you hadn't seen them coming, they ultimately make it more of a challenge and potentially more of an adventure. So it all worked out in the end. But yeah, it did change things a lot.
Part of the adventure was to get people to come out and join you for a bit anyway, to ride with you guys.
Yeah.
Did you have success in making that happen?
Yeah, absolutely. We had lots of people join us, particularly in the UK, because I guess, you know, Dave and I both live here. We've got a lot of friends and family here. And it was great to have people joining us. And one girl in particular stands out. She was 16 and her name's Alice. And she actually set herself a challenge to raise money for charity in one calendar year. This year, she's riding 5,300 miles on her grandmother's bicycle. And she actually came to one of Dave and I's presentation and then joined us the next day. And she rode the furthest distance anyone rode with us in the UK. And it was just great that she was able to join us and, of course, had her own brilliant story. And then we had people joining us on ElliptiGOs, which was loads of fun. And people doing their own challenges were joining us. That was great. We had people in different countries joining us. Oh, and I stayed with a woman in Switzerland, Tilly. She was great. She was a friend of a friend, and she put me up for the night. And in the morning when I left, she said, "I thought I'd do a few miles with you." And she did 12 miles with me, and she's in her 70s. So that was pretty cool.
Tell me a little bit about, if you can, the behind-the-scenes things that are going on with the ElliptiGO or with the Go Trek. Is there any support happening, and can you tell me about that?
We were supported massively by ElliptiGO. They loved the concept of what we were doing, and you know they really enjoyed the whole philosophy behind it. You know, the whole say yes more thing, and trying to engage with other people and share our adventure, but encourage others. And so, in terms of the planning and presentations, that's really where we had a lot of support. We had events that were planned for us, and we didn't have to handle too many of those logistics. You know, particularly DeAndrea, who's head of marketing over at ElliptiGO in the States. She worked so hard to get those events to happen all around Europe, because it was through the ElliptiGO dealers and distributors in Europe that we were able to set those up. And that side of things, we wouldn't have been able to do it so successfully without them. And, you know, not only did they organise the events, but they made sure that we were taken care of in terms of food and accommodation when we were doing those events. And, you know, just wherever possible, they helped with that kind of thing.
Tell me about the charity Coppafeel that you were riding for, and why was Coppafeel chosen?
Okay, so Dave actually Coppafeel is Dave's chosen charity for his Expedition 1000 project. And he knows Chris, the founder of Coppafeel. She set it up because she actually had breast cancer, and they missed it a couple of times. And by the time they actually diagnosed it, it was too late to completely cure her. And she was 23 at the time. She's now 27. And she set up the charity as a breast cancer awareness charity so that people don't have to go through what she went through, because she obviously believes that prevention is better than cure. So she's trying to educate people on that. Dave's already worked extensively and closely with them, so it seemed like a natural choice. On the second day of the trip, I actually was lucky enough to meet Chris. She's an absolutely lovely woman and incredibly inspirational, and you know what she's getting out there and doing despite having her own illness to deal with. And you know, I think there were days when it got tough on the Go Trek, but having met Chris and kind of getting to know her a little bit, it enabled me to dig a little bit deeper and think, well, if she can go through this and be strong and get on with it, then I can certainly dig deep and go for these miles and raise this money for the wonderful cause that Coppafeel is.
Squash, what's next for you?
Well, I'm actually right in the midst of planning a trip to the Aosta Valley in Italy. I'm heading over there to climb Monte Rosa, hopefully. That's the plan anyway. And in the next 2 weeks, I'm planning on riding my BMW motorbike from England out there, which is about 600-700 miles. I want to spend a little bit of time exploring the valley, which is a beautiful place. And then, I'd like to climb Monte Rosa, which is a 4,000-meter peak over there. So that's next.
Wow, it's exciting.
Oh, I can't wait. I love it over there. I love the Alps in the winter, but I love them equally for different reasons in the summer.
How can people contact you?
People can contact me via Facebook. It's just facebook.com/Squash Falconer, via Twitter, which is @Squash Falconer, or directly through my website, which is squashfalconer.com.
Squash Falconer, thank you so much for talking to me today and taking the time. I appreciate it. And
it's an absolute pleasure, Paul. Really good to talk to you.
Thank you, and good luck to you.
Thank you.
Recorded August 16, 2013. For more great podcasts, visit thepursuitzone.com.